excited to, I guess, show you the new version of the Downwind Aviator. It's something that Marcus and I have been working on a lot in the last, to be honest, like almost the last 6 years. It's been a project of ours, always trying to make it better and better. There's definitely been some new innovation that's, lended itself to, a few tweaks, and we're really happy with the boards we've got here over in Maui for the races that are coming up and about to be run. So the biggest changes are probably the bottom shape, the volume distribution, and the probably the length, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to run us through what we've changed, Marcus?
Yeah. So I guess starting with the bottom shape, the nose is a lot rounder than it used to be. It has no hard edge on the chine, and it just allows the board to change direction mid paddle up if you need to, which is pretty common.
Especially on the race lines over here.
Yeah. So it doesn't kind of lock it in to just paddling up. You don't get locked into that straight line. We've kept the kind of almost signature concave chine down through the middle, which we find kind of allows it to track enough, like without it being too squirmish. So we did a lot of prototypes with chines going right down the middle with quite hard edges, and as the boards have gotten longer and skinnier, they just went too straight, so we ditched that at the nose, and it's gone into more of a displacement round nose with kind of a flatter, but not flat. It's basically got a little bit of V in that flat middle section, and then with the concave chines through the middle. And then the tail kick, we've always had tail kick, and we've stuck with that pretty much from the back of the boxes. It starts to kick, and the chines come right in, and that's just basically like when you're paddling up, your tail doesn't grab and kind of slow you down when you're just before takeoff and that tail's still hitting the water. And also sometimes just when you're foiling, if you're a bit lower, you got a bump just kind of at the back, and you pump, you can grab water. It's a 1%er, you may or may not have experienced it, but that's the whole point of the that sort of tapered in chine at the tail, and it is basically the concave changes to a V, just to keep that, helps with all that tracking as well. So the only real hard edge is through the middle of the board, where your mast is and a little bit forward.
Which for me I love, because I think there's been a bit of a two different schools of thoughts going on with board design at the moment. They're either going full displacement or full planing, and chatting to Marcus, we've kind of gone a bit of a hybrid with a bit of displacement nose and then that planing just in front of the foil. For me, planing, especially trying to get up on smaller foils, is really important. If you're just displacement, it kind of lends itself more to the big slow foils, because a planing hull goes faster than a displacement hull. The reason people won't like a complete planing hull is because they can't paddle fast enough to get it planing, and that's where a displacement hull is better. So we've kind of hedged our bets here. We've done a little bit of both. The nose displaces, the tail displaces, but the middle of the board planes. So you can kind of use a bit of both, and that's been something that we've seen a lot. The other advantage of the flat section in front of the box, stability. Stability is huge for downwinding. We're normally downwinding in messy conditions, or windy conditions where there's chop. The chops are what we want to surf, but when we're trying to paddle up, I see it time and time again whenever I'm coaching, people go boards that are too tippy for them, too skinny for them, and they can't balance. This shape is more stable than a full displacement round bottom shape.
Yeah, and 100%.
And it's super important,
Yeah. I guess coming from the SUP background that we both have, we know how important stability is, because especially, a lot of race experience on SUPs, and I guess now foils as well. When the gun goes, you've got to pop to your feet in a mad rush and paddle up, and the amount of times you see people jump to their feet and fall off, it's pretty common. So like those concave rails, we've played a lot with different shapes of chines, and we lose stability with every other type that we've tried. So we've stuck with that. There doesn't seem to be a downside to it as far as everything we've tried with our outline. So yeah, that's the kind of the reason behind that concave rail and that shape through the middle. Our boards, I think, you know, there's people going to 9 foot, and then you got to rethink everything again as well. Our boards are kind of going up to 8, 6 and 9, but sort of I think that key, sort of that sweet spot is sort of the 8.0 and 8.6 for our shapes. Whether you're learning or racing, it's just going to depend on the width you choose.
Yeah, so the other thing that's changed from last year's range is the volume and the distribution of the volume. So we've lowered the volume a bit. What we found is with the hard edges, especially on the old board, that it was almost too corky for some people. They were going too much volume, and too much volume is just as bad as too little volume. You wouldn't think so, because in flat water it doesn't matter, but as soon as you get in the bumps, you're feeling every bit of chop. Basically, it's like a cork in the ocean, feeling everything. The volume that we've found that works for our boards at least is your body weight standing on the board. So if you're wearing a wetsuit and a life jacket, that's probably going to add a bit more weight. If you're doing a long crossing, you've got water in your pack, you're going to want a little bit higher volume. But your body weight standing on the board times 1.3 if you're more intermediate to advanced, and 1.4 if you're more intermediate to beginner. So if I'm 100 kilos, I'm looking at a 140 litre board if I'm a beginner. If I'm 100 kilos, I'm looking at a 130 litre board if I'm more of an intermediate to advanced rider. And that's just a ballpark, but that's kind of what we've designed these boards on for the volume distribution. We don't have too many boards that are over like 135 litres is about as big as they go. And then there's the bulk of the options that are between sort of 95 to 130 litres, give or take, because that's where we see the majority of the population of downwind foilers' weight being. In saying that, we haven't ignored the really heavy guys or the really light guys. We do have boards that are I think as low as like around the 80s and as high as, like I said before, around 150s, but the majority of foilers have been asking us for boards that are long, skinny and not too high in volume. So we've answered that call. Another feature that's new to this year is a longer box. They are
14 inches.
14 inches, and to me the biggest benefit actually is, one, you can use it for multiple brands. Code seems to like to be further forward in the box. GoFoil seems to like being further back in the box. But the biggest advantage for me is I can drop my plate in, so the 2 bolts can drop straight in. I can slide them across and then drop the back ones in, and slide it back and tighten it up. So a little bit of a drop box sort of feature. But yeah, other than that, it's just versatile. So you can use it for multiple brands, easier to sell on. You can also order customs. So if you don't want the long box, or you don't have the perfect dimensions, or you don't want a slightly different bottom shape, Marcus does custom through Sunova. So you can order a custom, chat to Marcus, and you can discuss the little tweaks and minor changes you want. I'd be surprised if you needed that, because there are a lot of options in our range, but if you want something special, Sunova and Marcus can get that going for you. One thing that's worth mentioning is with the carbon rails, if you're new to paddling, it's definitely a good idea to rail tape it, because with the black rail and the carbon and then the resin over the top, you can get, like the scuff marks are going to look worse on this rail than they are on this rail, because this rail's they sort of did like this sort of rough paint job, so that if you did scuff the rail you wouldn't notice it, whereas this black, which I think looks really nice, is going to show up your scuff marks. So rail tape is definitely a good idea if you're new to paddling and you're a bit of a rail hacker. If you're experienced, you probably don't need it at all. But it is still the Polonia sandwich with the carbon rails, so that hasn't changed. But yeah, by doing, we played around with a bunch of different layups, and we have got them a fair bit lighter. The numbers are on the website, but I'm super happy with the weights that these boards are coming out at, and
we're excited to release it.
Yeah, exciting times.